If you're just joining us, we're Derek, Ashley, and Pete, and we're exploring Alaska in our Class B RV Risky. Last time we had one of the most unforgettable experiences of our trip near Denali, taking a flight with Talkeetna Air Taxi that brought us up close to the mountains and even landed us on a glacier. If you missed that one, it was easily one of the wildest ways we've experienced the national park so far. This time we're trading the skies for the water in Seward, where we're taking Major Marine's 8.5-hour Kenai Fjords cruise to Northwestern Glacier. We'll show you what the day was really like, what we got to see, what to expect if you book it, and why pairing it with Exit Glacier the next day made Seward even more worth the stop. We made it into the Seward area a few days before our cruise and ended up dry camping at Trail Lake Viewpoint. It turned out to be one of those simple overnight spots that felt like part of the adventure. If you don't RV, dry camping basically means staying without hookups, so you're fully self-contained for the night. But with the views like this, it really did not feel like we were missing anything. We had the water, the mountains, and seaplanes constantly flying overhead, which made the whole area feel alive. Now, our original cruise had actually been canceled the day before because of a storm that brought in high sea levels, and that is something worth keeping in mind if you're planning a visit here. Weather in Alaska can change plans quickly, especially on a long boat tour like this. So while the delay was not what we wanted, it ended up being a good reminder that flexibility is part of the experience. And in the end, it also gave us a couple more quiet nights in a beautiful spot before heading into Seward 2 days later. So here's the email that we got from Major Marine that really showed that they do the best that they can to support their visitors. This was the same type of empathetic and helpful response we received from Talkeetna Air Taxi when we had a delay there as well. These companies in Alaska are all about the experience for their visitors and will do whatever they can to assure that they give you the best they can offer. So whether you are there for just the day or have the ability to be flexible, Major Marine is definitely a gold star tour operator in our eyes. A couple days later, after the storm cleared, we headed into Seward for our Major Marine cruise into Kenai Fjords National Park. Major Marine offers a few different cruise options out of Seward, from shorter wildlife-focused trips to the 6-hour, 7.5-hour, and 8.5-hour cruises. We chose the longest one because we wanted to go farther into Kenai Fjords National Park, spend more time on the water, and have the best chance to see a wider mix of wildlife, scenery, and glaciers. Now, if you're shorter on time, the other options may make more sense. But for us, this felt like the most complete experience. The 8.5-hour Northwestern Fjord cruise is Major Marine's longest option, and it takes you into a much more remote part of the park on a smaller boat with up to 60 passengers. It includes a complimentary deli lunch with your choice of sandwich plus chips, a drink, and dessert. Drinks are available for purchase on board, and binoculars are provided too, which definitely helps where wildlife is farther off in the distance. Now remember, this is a full day commitment, but that is also what makes it feel like such a big Alaska experience. Looking at the route ahead, this already felt like way more than just a standard boat tour. Over the course of the day, we would make our way through Spire Cove, deep into Northwestern Fjord, past major glaciers, into Cataract Cove, past bird rookeries and sea lion haulouts, and even into the rougher water of the Gulf of Alaska.
It is 7:09 a.m. and we are awake. That's stupid. We're about to go on a big old boat. Big old swells. 2 feet swells, he said. Yesterday was 15 feet swells and it got canceled. It was supposed to be yesterday. So today is the day. I got like 6 Dramamine with me just in case.
Better share.
The last time we went on a boat cruise and I brought my Dramamine with, I was popular. Because there was people that didn't take any thinking they'd be fine and they were not fine. You may be wondering why we're up at 7 a.m. in the morning on purpose. That's what I'm doing. So we're going to be doing a boat cruise today, and it is 8.5-hour tour. So we just dropped Pete off at a doggy daycare, and now we're going to get some breakfast here, a little breakfast sandwich, before we take off. Just got it. Ooh, it smells so good. Can you smell it?
Once we started boarding, it finally felt like the day we had been waiting for was actually happening. After having our original cruise canceled because of the storm, it was a relief to finally be heading out. We were on Major Marine's Orca Song, a smaller vessel that seats up to 60 passengers, and that ended up being one of the things we really liked about this tour. It made the whole experience feel more personal and less crowded, and it was easy to move around and get outside to better views. And with the covered upper deck, we were still able to spend a lot of time outside, even with the cold and rainy weather. Not long after leaving the dock, we got our first wildlife sighting of the day, an older sea otter floating on his back with that gray face that made him easy to spot. From there, we kept making our way farther out from Seward and deeper into the park toward our first scenic area of the day. As we moved into Spire Cove, the scenery started to shift in a big way. The steep rock walls, narrow inlets, and low clouds gave everything this raw, dramatic feel.
Spire there flying around right now. Horned puffins have these little fleshy horns, one above each eye, that give them the name. They also have this big white chest, and that's an easy way to tell them apart from the tufted puffin.
Even though the fog made it harder to see farther out, it also made the whole place feel more mysterious. It was our first real taste of just how rugged this day was going to feel.
There's a few people that had to go downstairs. A little nauseous. We took our Dramamine. It's really hard to walk and move. Sit and drink. It's a bright idea to go get a drink right now. We have 6-foot swells. I'm gripping the floor, and I'm using him as an anchor just so I can sit without flying off. How you feeling?
Good.
Not very convincing. I'm doing good. I can't believe it. The Dramamine worked really well for me.
When we reached Crater Bay, it almost felt like the whole day took a breath. The wind had died down, the waves were gone, and the water felt calm and protected compared to some of the more exposed stretches we had already gone through. It ended up being a really beautiful place to stop for lunch, surrounded by that dramatic Kenai Fjords scenery, but with a much more peaceful feel in the water. Major Marine includes a complimentary deli lunch on this cruise. With your choice of turkey, roast beef, or vegetarian sandwiches, and we went with the roast beef. Now it also comes with chips and a drink, and later on we got a brownie for dessert that was honestly really good for such a basic lunch setup. Alright, so it's not some gourmet meal, but for a full day boat tour, we thought it was solid and hit the spot. And if you think you may want a little more food during a day this long, I would definitely recommend bringing a snack in your bag too.
This moraine that we're sitting on top of indicates that this is the last place that the ice that once filled this fjord, the last place that it was stable. Earlier glaciers for the very first time, and when it did, Northwestern Glacier was sitting right here where we are, and everything out ahead of us was completely full of ice, over 1,000 feet high.
By this point, we were deeper into Kenai Fjords than any of Major Marine's other cruises go, and you could feel the difference. Northwestern Fjord felt quieter, more rugged, and more glacier-shaped than the earlier parts of the day. Even before we reached the major glacier stop, it already felt like we were moving through a landscape built by ice. And along the way, we got one of the coolest wildlife moments of the day. Seeing a humpback whale mother and calf out in this remote stretch.
So maybe a little bit of a shallower dive, but truthfully she wasn't down very long at all, maybe 5 or 6 minutes, so not so bad. Now, all of the whales in the world are broken into these 2 really big categories. We have what are called mysticetes and odontocetes, so baleen whales and toothed whales. Humpbacks are baleen whales. When they migrate, they're headed to the tropics. That's actually where they're born. They're not from here. This is just their feeding grounds. They come up here to feed. But humpback whales are from the tropics. The majority of our whales, something like 65 to 70% of them, are coming from the Hawaiian Islands.
As we kept moving deeper into Northwestern Fjord, we reached Archer Glacier, and this is where the glacier part of the day really started to build. Even before getting to the main stop, you could already feel just how much ice still defines this part of the park. Just after that, we passed Ogive Glacier, and this one has a really interesting detail behind its name. It was named for the dark and light arched bands called ogives that form on some glaciers below ice falls. Those bands are harder to see now as the glacier has thinned and picked up more sediment over time, which also makes it one more reminder of how much these glaciers are changing. And then we arrived at Northwestern Glacier, the main glacier stop on this cruise, and the signature payoff of the whole route.
Alright, we are on the boat tour and we are taking about a 25-minute break to hang out with these glaciers. This one in particular will move about 6 feet a day, which is quite active. So just standing here and listening, you can hear cracking and pieces are falling off into the water. It is pretty cool. Very unique experience.
So we do have time to just.
And then they bring some ice up and you can take pictures with it, which is cool. Hot water, Kahlua, peppermint schnapps, hot chocolate, whipped cream. It's warm and delicious.
It's hotter than an otter.
Hot otter.
After spending time in front of Northwestern Glacier, this part of the day really started to sink in. The staff pulled a giant piece of glacier ice out of the water for us to hold, which made the whole experience feel even more real. And then, as we started making our way away from the glacier, they made margaritas using glacier ice, which was just such a fun and memorable touch. But what stayed with us most was the glacier itself. This is not just a scenic stop where you look from a distance and move on. We could hear the cracking in the ice, watch pieces break off, and actually feel the power of what was happening in front of us. It was one of those moments that made this cruise feel much bigger than just a boat tour. After leaving Northwestern Glacier, we made our way to Cataract Cove, and this ended up being one of the most visually impressive parts of the whole cruise. Water was pouring down the cliffs all around us, and because of the storms that had just come through, the falls were really flowing. The captain brought the boat in so close that the waterfall was actually landing on the front of the boat. By this point, it was clear this longer Northwestern Fjord route was not just about one glacier stop. It kept putting us in these huge, dramatic places that felt bigger and more remote than what you get on a shorter cruise. Next up was Beehive Island, where the bird activity was non-stop. We saw tufted puffins, common murres, and parakeet auklets, with birds flying all around us in the hundreds. Stops like this are one of the reasons Kenai Fjords feels so alive, because it's not just about glaciers and whales. The seabird colonies are a huge part of the experience. As we left Beehive Island, we made our way toward the Chiswell Islands. where we saw a Steller sea lion colony with pups out on the rocks. This is one of the known rookery areas in the Kenai Fjords region, which means it's a place where sea lions gather during breeding season and where females give birth and raise their young. Since we were there in early August, those pups were most likely from that same summer breeding season. They were still young, but not newborns. Stops like this are a big part of what makes Kenai Fjords feel so wild, because you're not just seeing scenery. You are moving through places that are active habitat for marine wildlife.
2 humpbacks right here off our left.
As we crossed into the Gulf of Alaska, the whole feel of the trip changed again. The water felt more open, more exposed, and a little less protected than what we had been in earlier. It was also where we got one of the most exciting wildlife moments of the day, a humpback breach. Now, we didn't catch that part on camera, but even just watching the whale out there in the bigger open water was one of those moments that instantly pulls everyone in. Wildlife moments like that happen fast, and sometimes you're just busy watching instead of filming.
You might want to move away from the bow of the boat. You're into it, great, just hold on. But it could be a little bit bumpy for probably 15, maybe 20 minutes as we cross over into back to Resurrection Day.
This is my favorite video so far.
Even on the way back towards Seward, the wildlife was not done with us yet. In the rougher water, we saw 2 fin whales, which was a huge surprise and a pretty special sighting since fin whales are the 2nd largest animals on Earth. We also got to see a Dall's porpoise, which are famous for how fast they move and for riding the waves created by boats. After such a long day already packed with glaciers, birds, sea lions, and humpbacks, it's pretty amazing that the crew still had more to give us on the ride back. At the end of the trip, the crew updated this map with the full route, the places we visited, and the wildlife we saw along the way. On a day like this where you cover so much water and see so much in a short span, it was a really helpful way to look back and take it all in. By the time we got back, I was completely wiped out. Between the cold, the rough water, trying to balance on the boat, and just how much happened over the course of the day, this tour really took it out of us in the best way. And if you're doing a full day tour like this with the dog, one thing that really helped us was having a good place for Pete to stay. We left him at Seward Dog Lodge, and it worked out really well for us. It felt like a solid option for a long day, where we needed Pete somewhere safe and cared for. So if you're visiting Seward with your dog and planning a full day activity like this, it is definitely something worth looking into ahead of time. The next day we headed to Exit Glacier, and this is such a good follow-up if you're spending more than one day in Seward. It gives you a completely different glacier experience from what you get on the water. The drive-in already feels like part of the visit, but what really stands out are the roadside markers showing where the glacier used to be in different years. Seeing those in person makes the glacier retreat feel much more real. Then once you get out and start walking, you get that on-the-ground glacier experience that feels completely different from what we had the day before on the boat. For us, doing Major Marine one day and Exit Glacier the next ended up being one of the best ways to experience 2 very different sides of Kenai Fjords National Park.